after something unexpected was captured by NASA's live lunar feed. Michio Kaku just sent out a disturbing message. A huge, inexplicable anomaly that is close to the lunar surface. This isn't a random bug or camera noise. The video is authentic and shows a location that contradicts everything of our knowledge about our neighbor in space. During routine stream inspections, NASA scientists first captured a peak, which they then cross-checked with specialists around the globe. Social media exploded a few seconds later. Is this the largest cosmic shock we have ever encountered? An overview of the unexpected lunar data. In addition to its initial goals of studying galaxies, star systems, and planetary atmospheres, the James Webb Space Telescope required appropriate calibration targets. Due to decades of studying lunar reflectivity in various wavelengths, the Moon's surface was one such reference point. Analysts at the European Space Agency and NASA observed an odd shape arising from the data gathered on the far side, the hemisphere that is usually facing away from Earth during a normal session. An unusual infrared pattern that spanned around 4 to 6 kilometers was caught by the telescope. No member of the calibration team anticipated the appearance of such a significant feature in a location that was long thought to be extensively recorded. Multiple inspections revealed that there was, in fact, something that stood out thermally and geometrically, despite the team's first assumption that there was a malfunction or noise issue. Experts discovered faint clues from Soviet and American datasets when they compared the raw frames with previous mission records. Unusual mass anomalies had been detected in that area by missions such as Clementine and the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, but they lacked the resolution to detect actual lines or corners. Early in the 1970s, Soviet lunar records noted brief temperature spikes that were classified as inaccurate observations. The online data now indicated that these prior anomalies were not entirely random. After the far side shape was verified, people started talking about how it managed to remain undetected for so long. Numerous spacecraft had undoubtedly taken pictures and mapped the far side, but no high-resolution mid-infrared photographs could ever match what the Webb could do. Apart from its magnitude, the heat signal caused a stir among scientists. Without direct sunlight, temperatures dropped dramatically throughout the lunar night, making a location on the surface exceedingly frigid. However, a discernible warmth was emitted by this structure above any typical baseline for lunar rock. Geologists questioned whether it contained radioactive components or concentrated minerals like titanium that may retain heat. Others thought it was a manufactured explanation. The geometry could represent the arrangement or assembly of uncommon materials. When the data showed polygon-like corners and lines instead of the rugged features that typically occur on a beaten celestial body like the Moon, the sense of mystery increased. Planning additional observation runs to enable Webb to collect mid-infrared photos from various perspectives was the first response. Scientists from NASA and IISSA were ready to stack these frames in order to verify the anomaly's configuration and determine whether its thermal pattern had changed over time. Through references that were leaked on professional forums, the public learned about the discovery. Theories ranging from top-secret Cold War operations to alien outposts quickly arose when the tale went viral online. In an effort to exercise caution, official outlets said that while the anomaly was a legitimate finding, more research was required. Nevertheless, there was a great deal of enthusiasm in scholarly circles since the Moon had unexpectedly disclosed something. Remnants of previous operations and current archival clues. Scientists have already collected a few fragments of information on the Moon's far side from previous trips before the James Webb Space Telescope's groundbreaking discoveries. The first blurry images of the Moon's far side were taken by Soviet lunar missions beginning in the late 1950s. Despite their blurriness, these early photos captivated scholars and laid the groundwork for additional investigation. More sophisticated spacecraft, like as the US Apollo missions and the Soviet Luna 1971, carried out in-depth flybys of the far side in the 1960s and 1970s. During their orbits, astronauts on Apollo missions even claimed to have seen flashing spots of light, known as transient lunar phenomena, or TLPs. These occurrences were frequently written off as cosmic rays striking their camera sensors or outgassing. But now, some scientists question whether these glows were precursors to heat or electromagnetic emissions from the recently found structure. In the same sector where the angular structure was later detected by the James Webb Space Telescope, Luna 19 is said to have captured a shadow anomaly in 1974. This shadow was initially written off by Soviet engineers as a camera error. These documents were reviewed by Dr. Pavel Kov of the Russian Academy of Sciences decades later. At the same coordinates, his more recent research showed weak, erratic heat signals. The Webb discovery has rekindled interest in these older data points, even if at the time it was not enough to draw conclusions. Similar to this, astronauts took pictures of large areas of cratered highlands during the Apollo missions, although some of the photos included strange shadows. Unfortunately, it was challenging to draw any firm conclusions on odd traits due to the low resolution of the time. Better imaging instruments for studying the moon's surface were made available by the Clementine mission in 1994 and the Lunar Prospector mission in 1998 as we entered the 1990s. Both missions detected changes in gravity and observed mascon, or unanticipated mass concentrations, in certain regions. Near the coordinates of the angular structure that Webb recently discovered, one or two of these mass were discovered. During Clementine's mission, radar scans also detected small anomalies that were written off as noise because, at the time, there was no geological explanation for them. By creating high-resolution elevation maps of the far side, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO, which was launched in 2009, contributed to the puzzle. However, unless the sun's angle created a deep shadow, visible light cameras had trouble highlighting odd surfaces. Most of the time, the anomaly was practically unnoticeable because it was incorporated into the cratered landscape. Additionally, the LRO's thermal data was sparse and did not show anything noteworthy. By recording odd radio reflections from the far side, Japan's Selene mission in the early 2000s added to the enigma. The bounce-back signals were not consistent with rocks or normal lunar landscape. These reflections were put away and labeled as strange at the time. Thermal photos taken by China's Chang'e missions also showed hotspots that aligned with the approximate region, but the images were not sharp enough to show corners or straight boundaries. Tiny signs of something out of the ordinary surfaced on 5 key missions: Luna 19, Clementine, Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, Selene, and Chang'e. On their own, these irregularities, which are frequently written off as noise or glitches, seemed unimportant. Nevertheless, they created a more distinct image when paired with Webb's high-resolution mid-IR photography. For decades, the angular object that was glowing with an inexplicable thermal energy had existed on the moon's far side, undetected by previous detectors. Only now, thanks to the Webb's increased sensitivity, could scientists combine the data to create a coherent narrative. This insight has led to a re-examination of records that date back decades, demonstrating how technology and hindsight may provide fresh insight into riddles that have been unsolved for generations. The layout and heat signature of the structure. A formation spanning 4 to 6 kilometers with at least 4 or 5 linear edges connecting at a discernible angle was visible on Webb's mid-infrared maps. It was frequently described by onlookers as a huge polygon spread out across an old crater area. At this enormous scale, the edges appeared too straight to be entirely natural. Scientists also discussed reflecting properties in relation to the detection. Certain aspects of the anomaly indicated metallic or unusual mineral content when the surface composition was examined, suggesting a potential capacity to hold heat longer than normal lunar rock. The measurements differed thermally from the nearby regolith. Surface temperatures can drop dramatically during moon night. However, scans revealed that even when neighboring parts cooled, the structure retained any remaining warmth. A layer of thermally insulating material beneath the formation was suggested by one theory. Although such a concentrated deposit seemed impossible, another theory suggested that radioactive decay from specific elements might provide an interior heat source. The geometry sparked additional conjecture that man-made It might be made of materials designed to withstand harsh environments and retain heat. Though mainstream experts advised caution, a number of unconventional concepts, such as secret reactors or dormant power systems, were floated. When NASA physician Elena Martinez verified the size using parallax measurements from other online observation runs, a thorough investigation began to take shape. Her findings confirmed that the anomaly was more than just a strangely shaped rim of a crater. Rather, it appeared to have discrete corners with nearly straight angles between them. Although there were a few slightly curved sections, the overall effect was very different from any known arrangement caused by impact or volcanic activity. Though no one was convinced of how they formed, the corners had sharper angles that invoked artificial geometry. Although basalt columns on Earth sometimes appear polygonic, according to some geologists, their normal formations do not extend in such even lines for kilometers. Researchers looked at the reflectance profile, which can occasionally indicate a surface's composition or roughness. Because Webb can record numerous spectral bands, the material may be denser or more metallic than typical lunar rock, as suggested by unusual spikes in the mid-infrared spectrum. Heat is often reflected and radiated in predictable ways by normal regolith. However, these indications suggested a higher thermal inertia. One theory was a purely geological deposit of rare metals, but the shape made it difficult to believe. Such uniform edges generated by random deposits would be a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. Comparison with the lunar geology that is known. The Moon's geology is mostly composed of thick mountains on the far side, basaltic plains known as Maria on the near side, and craters left by meteor strikes. Impacts changed the surface over billions of years, causing overlapping craters and debris to be scattered. Lava tubes were left behind by sporadic volcanic activity in the past. Some of these collapsed and created twisting waterways. Straight reels, which are often thin and do not link in polygon-like forms, were occasionally produced by fault lines. Not even those reels that are known to exist emit or retain heat in such a noticeable manner. Astrobiologists occasionally bring up the idea of historical reports of lunar glows, transitory occurrences, or short-lived lights. These might result from brief occurrences, gas leaks, or tiny meteoroid collisions. A clue may be added if there was any outgassing close to the anomaly. However, that location has not yet been linked to any significant markers of active lunar geology. Although collapsed lava tubes that could form a partial wall were taken into consideration by the researchers, the lines they saw were far more angular and straight than those found in normal tube sections. The fact that the highlands in this area display older, more worn terrain suggests that fine features should have been lost due to repeated collisions over ages. This is another crucial aspect. On the near side of the Moon, where thorium, potassium, and rare earth elements are more abundant, some analysts pointed to the Proalarum creep terrain. Strange readings are indeed produced in that area. That zone does not, however, contain the far side anomaly. A huge set of straight edges would not necessarily result from a localized pocket of radioactive materials, although it would yield odd thermal signatures. Furthermore, abnormalities have already been detected throughout the area on the older orbiter-derived gravitational field maps. The local gravitational gradient might be changed by something extending underground. It is generally acknowledged that no known natural mechanism on the Moon can create a large, polygon-like structure that endures numerous meteor strikes. Geologists so found themselves in a bind. The shape and heat output of even the most bizarre natural creation appeared to be the result of a series of occurrences that were too fortuitous to explain. However, several scientists remained committed to geological explanations, arguing that there might be an exceedingly rare series of cracks or that fragmentary data could be deceiving instruments. They pointed out that, considering how little close-up research has been done on the Moon's far side, it would be the location in the solar system that would surprise us the most. In fact, little is known about the deep crust layers or local makeup in that hemisphere. A peek at the variety of explanations and other dimensions. The range of possibilities shifted from solid science to speculative physics as scientists attempted to explain the enigmatic structure that the James Webb Space Telescope had discovered on the moon's far side. Dr. Nain Zhou, the physicist and Nobel laureate, offered one of the most unusual theories, speculating that the structure might be the consequence of a dimensional overlap. Models of quantum physics suggest that our brain or three-dimensional universe may be located in a higher dimensional space. Extreme circumstances might cause these brains to momentarily interact, allowing matter or energy to move between dimensions. Dr. Zhou suggested that high-energy cosmic rays might be concentrated in one area by the moon's far side acting as a natural lens. These particles may produce geometric or thermal patterns in our world, which she described as a projection or echo of something happening somewhere else, if they were able to cross dimensional boundaries. Dr. Zhou highlighted previous investigations that documented inexplicable bursts of high-energy particles in the polar regions of Earth. Despite defying conventional physics, these explosions were repeatedly recorded, which made her hypothesize that they might happen on the moon. If this is the case, the Webb's visible angular geometry and heat signature may not be a physical structure but rather a ripple from another dimension. It demonstrated how data that cannot be explained by traditional geology or man-made structures frequently drives scientists to examine unorthodox ideas, even while skeptics dismissed this as mindless guesswork. Other hypotheses, meanwhile, concentrated on explanations that were more concrete. One theory alluded to aspirations from the Cold War era, including the U.S. Army's Project Horizon in the 1950s, which sought to establish a military base on the moon. Despite being formally shelved during the planning phase, conspiracy theorists asserted that the project may have been secretly carried out. In this case, the jagged walls that Webb found might be the remains of an earlier installation, with its heat signature originating from abandoned equipment or radioactive decay. Although the hypothesis gained support in speculative circles, skeptics contended that such a large business would have left behind evidence like records or supply chain traces. Science fiction-inspired alien megastructures were another frequently mentioned option. Supporters hypothesized that the building may have been constructed millions of years ago as a base or sentinel by an advanced species. They contended that the angular geometry suggested clever design. Lunar monoliths left by alien civilizations were long thought to serve as a warning to humanity once its technology was sufficiently developed to locate them, according to thinkers like Arthur C. If accurate, the heat could represent unused energy or a system that is still operational. Although the theory generated countless online music conversations, others questioned why an alien species would leave something so visible. Geology revealed a more straightforward answer. According to some scientists, the structure might represent a huge deposit of thorium-laced rock or titanium-rich basalt that was exposed by crustal shifts over millions of years. The temperature anomaly may be explained by these materials, and the deposit may have been somewhat angularly formed by natural impact events. However, critics pointed out that, particularly at this size, geology rarely exhibits crisp corners and continuous straight edges. Before making any judgments, NASA and the European Space Agency, ESA, agreed that more information was required. Future rover or orbiter missions to investigate the location in further detail were being explored, and more scans and imagery from Webb and other instruments were planned, identifying a potential coded pattern. The application of pattern recognition algorithms to Webb photos was one of the most disturbing discoveries. Software from the Space Telescope Science Institute was first designed to analyze the morphologies of distant galaxies and possible radio signals from other planets. For a two-dimensional scan of the lunar anomaly, researchers modified it. A recurring pattern in the structure lines was detected by the system, statistically indicating a spiral that correlated with Fibonacci ratios and grid points that corresponded to prime numbers. This astounding finding initially sounded too strange to be true. Pareidolia is the term for the phenomena where our minds find shapes where none exist. However, the alignment was validated by further inspections. Prime numbers like 2, 3, 5, 7, and 11 were indicated by grid points or dots, and the spiral grew at ratios that matched the golden spiral from the Fibonacci series. With amazing accuracy, all of this was mapped throughout the surface down to the submeter level. It was quite unlikely that nature would have inadvertently produced such a complex mathematical pattern. Professor Amina Patel of MIT was among the Codereekers who appeared to be certain that these shapes were too precise to be coincidental. They discovered that the likelihood of such an arrangement arising by sheer chance was extremely low. However, some scientists had their doubts. They noted that, particularly in spiral growth, some crystals or geological structures can resemble Fibonacci sequences. However, the observation of a long structure with prime number spacing over kilometers pushed the boundaries of what is normally produced by natural processes. If the pattern was real, it suggested that the pursuit of universal communication was intentional. Fibonacci spirals and prime numbers are frequently mentioned as indicators of intelligence. Some conjectured that this could be an encoded invitation or a cosmic billboard. Some even dreamed that if we decoded the pattern thoroughly, it might contain advanced data. Repeated observation was requested by skeptics. They believed that illusions might be created by a single data transfer. Nevertheless, the same pattern was seen. After several Webb passes conducted from different angles and during different moon phases, rechecks using machine learning verified that it wasn't a one-time occurrence. The anomaly was transformed from a curiosity to a possible message by this discovery. Cryptographers from all across the world joined the discussion, examining pixel distributions to see if those prime locations matched established mathematical constants. They looked for references to universal physics constants like Planck's constant or the speed of light in the spacing. The underlying prime Fibonacci geometry appeared to be resilient, despite the inconsistent results. The public's response varied from amazement to doubt. By leaving sophisticated mathematical symbols on the moon's far side, people wondered what a secret or extraterrestrial intelligence may wish to convey. Others made the joke that cryptographers must have been working on a huge puzzle if it was a covert military operation. According to conspiracy channels, the codes have been known for years but kept hidden from the public. NASA did not formally declare the recurrent geometric signals to be proof of anything. It merely confirmed that pattern-seeking algorithms had discovered them, reviewing previous data sets. Many teams re-examined earlier archives after the coded theme was discovered in an attempt to find allusions to prime-based or spiral-like shapes in historical images or records. While NASA archivists delved into Apollo data, teams at the Russian Academy of Sciences sorted through Soviet Luna microfilm. The story never gained support, despite reports that certain mission specialists had pointed out angular shadows in several far-side crater photographs. There were brief bursts of brightness in some vintage film footage that no one could understand. Partial matches were found when those highlights were compared to the location of the Webb, although the quality was too low to verify anything. A few unprocessed photos from the 1960s and 1970s showed elongated shapes where the anomaly resides. Radio signals from ground-based telescopes that had reflected off the moon were also analyzed by researchers. They occasionally discovered strange reflection profiles close to the same places. Shallow ridges in the general area that could be the formation's corners were identified by applying specific filters to 21st century lunar reconnaissance orbiter imagery. Each of these tidbits of information suggested a coherent narrative. For many decades, there was a sizable angular region that manifested as minor irregularities in hardware that wasn't made to look for precise geometry. One thermal map that revealed an unexpectedly warm region during the moon night even included Chinese Chang'e data as a hint. The puzzle's development sparked debate on how science occasionally ignores oddities for which there is no obvious answer. Each mission throughout the years had a more ambitious objective, such as mapping entire areas or looking for water ice. When money and attention were diverted to other goals, it could be simple to ignore a faint form or thermal spike on the other side. The previous data sets didn't suddenly acquire new significance until after Webb's high-resolution mid-infrared pass. These parts taken together demonstrated that the abnormality was a long-term occurrence. Through numerous moon cycles, intense emotions, and heated discussions, it had remained constant. The public's interest in the structures was sparked by the disclosure. Every official comment was analyzed by online groups, which passed along each phrase's underlying meaning. Governments had been aware of the facility for years and had kept it under wraps. According to many, some posted complex links to stories from antiquity or the notion that the moon was a man-made satellite. NASA made an effort to control expectations by stressing that it was conducting an active investigation and not drawing any hasty judgments. All other lunar research was overshadowed by the questions that scientists attending conferences were asked about the far-side anomaly. Some want complete transparency and the real-time publication of site data. There were petitions claiming that the formation belonged to all of humanity if it was man-made. Some business voices, on the other hand, saw an opportunity to take use of such resources. There could be riches to be made if the shape included technology or metals. The Outer Space Treaty, which forbids national claims of ownership, was cited by space law experts. However, what if someone else had placed this artifact? The guidelines for dealing with an alien construction were unclear. Media outlets, meanwhile, ran segments about hidden Cold War outposts, alien possibilities, and any other topic to get attention. Documentaries appeared fairly immediately. Astrophysicists made an effort to keep the conversation grounded by using accepted practices for verifying anomalies. However, the public's desire for answers increased while official outlets made an effort to maintain discipline. Waves of communications urged NASA and ESA to launch a spacecraft to the spot right away. Compared to human landings at the lunar South Pole, some claimed it was more urgent. Whether investigation should go to the far side or keep concentrating on locating water ice was a topic of debate about political funding allocations. Meanwhile, the discovery of the coded patterns sparked a whole community of puzzle solvers and cryptographers. There were online forums where fans discussed their hypotheses of secret messages or prime grids. Although no formal announcements supported these claims, others claimed to decode fragmentary sequences that matched universal constants or stellar coordinates. Reminiscent of the Apollo era, societal interest in the moon surged. But in a unique way, people believed that we might be about to make a truly revolutionary geological or technological discovery. Initial preparations for a direct probe. As information kept confirming the shape's existence, mission planners started formulating concepts for a focused strategy. A customized orbiter with a ground-penetrating radar, a high-resolution thermal camera, and a magnetic field mapping instrument was one of the most well-liked ideas. Since the moon would obstruct direct connection with Earth, a relay satellite is necessary to park such an orbiter on the far side. The engineering difficulties, however, did not lessen enthusiasm. To share expertise and spread costs, scientists from NASA and ESSA suggested creating an international cooperation, with plans to outfit rovers or tiny hop probes to navigate ridges and collect samples. Robotic landing suggestions emerged. Stable methods to manage the uneven terrain were discussed by engineers, particularly if the structure's edges were steep. Drilling below the surface to look for subsurface cavities was another concept. Advanced scanning or direct sample may show exotic metal or structural supports if the shape had an internal chamber. If it proved to be important, a major concern was whether it was worth the danger to disturb the place. Guidelines for planetary protection typically deal with biological contamination, but in this case, the preservation of possible evidence of an unidentified process was more important. At the same time, researchers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory investigated the potential for tiny drone-like devices that move through the low-gravity environment using thrusters rather than rotors. To create a thorough map, they could land, collect information, and then jump to another location. It was unclear how such an expedition would be funded. Numerous pertinent organizations contended that political momentum might be increased just by the public's enthusiasm. The discussion was joined by private space companies, who said they may launch less complex, less expensive probes. Their technical ability to manage the intricacies of a far-side expedition was questioned by skeptics. Internal studies conducted by NASA evaluated the results of allocating money to this location in comparison to other priorities, such as Artemis missions to the lunar South Pole. There was a noticeable air of urgency throughout these conversations. Concerned that the location might provide answers to important concerns regarding the moon's past or perhaps about extraterrestrial intelligence, scientists intended to collect first-hand information as soon as possible. However, planning for large-scale space missions takes years. It would take time to create and market new instruments, even if approval was expedited. Given that the anomaly had the potential to upend long-held assumptions about Earth's nearest neighbor, many observers believed it merited a focused investigation anyhow. Thanks for watching another episode. Please like and subscribe for similar content.